Picture this: Boston, late 19th century. The air in the city's bustling hospitals is thick with the scent of ether and carbolic acid. Amidst the suffering and fear, there's a beacon of light, a nurse so cheerful and kind that her patients affectionately call her Jolly Jane. This is Jane Toppan, and her smile is as comforting as the medicine she administers. She flits from bedside to bedside, a story on her lips, a joke ready to coax a laugh from a weary patient. She is, by all accounts, an angel of mercy. But angels can fall, and sometimes, the brightest light casts the darkest shadow. To understand the darkness that coiled beneath Jane's sunny disposition, we must look back at a childhood devoid of warmth and stability. Born on Cali, her life began in tragedy. Her mother died of consumption when she was just a baby, and her father, a tailor known as Cali the Crack, was an abusive alcoholic who eventually committed himself to an insane asylum, leaving his young daughters as orphans. Honora and her sister were sent to the Boston Female Asylum, an orphanage for destitute girls. It was a bleak existence, a far cry from the loving home every child deserves. At the age of 6, Honora was indentured to the Toppan family of Lowell, Massachusetts. She was never formally adopted, her status forever that of a servant. They renamed her Jane, stripping away the last vestige of her old identity. While she was given an education and lived in a respectable home, she was always an outsider, watching the family's biological daughter, Elizabeth, receive the love and acceptance she craved. This early life, marked by abandonment, instability, and a constant feeling of being second best, planted a seed of deep-seated resentment and a desperate, twisted need for control. In 1885, at the age of 28, Jane Toppan found her calling, or so it seemed. She enrolled in the nursing program at Cambridge Hospital. Here, she could finally shed the skin of the unwanted servant girl and become someone respected, someone needed. She excelled in her studies, charming both her superiors and her patients. The nickname Jolly Jane followed her, a testament to her seemingly endless wellspring of good cheer. She was the nurse everyone wanted, the one who would stay late, offer an extra word of comfort, and hold a patient's hand through the long, dark hours of the night. But after the lights went out, when the hospital corridors fell silent, a different Jane emerged. Under the flickering gaslight of the nurse's station, her cheerful face would harden, her eyes turning cold and calculating. She became a student of a much darker art. Her fascination wasn't with healing, but with the fragile line between life and death. She began to experiment, not with cures, but with poisons. Her tools were no longer just bandages and bombs, but morphine and atropine, a potent combination she discovered could mimic the symptoms of a stroke or heart failure. She began with patients who were already close to death, those whose passing wouldn't raise suspicion. She would administer a carefully measured dose, just enough to bring them to the brink. Then, just as they began to slip away, she would administer the antidote, pulling them back. She played God, holding their lives in her hands. This gave her a thrill, a sense of power she had never known. But the thrill of resuscitation soon wore off. She wanted more. She wanted the ultimate power, the power to decide who lived and who died. Her methods were intimate and horrifying. She would lean in close to a vulnerable patient, her smile a gentle mask. As the poison coursed through their veins, as they gasped and convulsed, Jane would watch, her expression shifting from feigned concern to a quiet, chilling satisfaction. She would climb into bed with her dying victims, holding them in her arms, whispering to them as their life drained away. For Jane, this was the pinnacle of intimacy and control, a morbid fulfillment she derived from their final, helpless moments. She later confessed that she derived a sexual thrill from these acts, feeling a charge as she watched the life fade from their eyes. The angel of mercy had become a monster, her shadow stretching long and menacing across the hospital floor. Despite numerous patient deaths on her watch, Jane's cheerful demeanor deflected suspicion. She was eventually dismissed from Cambridge Hospital, not for murder, but for being reckless with opiates. But this was no setback for Jane, it was a liberation. Now, she could take her twisted experiments beyond the confines of the hospital. She became a private nurse, a position that gave her unfettered access to the homes and trust of unsuspecting families. Her personal life became a hunting ground. She poisoned her landlords, an elderly couple who had been kind to her, simply to see what would happen. Then, she turned on her own foster sister, Elizabeth. The resentment that had simmered since childhood finally boiled over. Under the pretense of caring for her, Jane poisoned Elizabeth, calmly folding the bedsheets over her body once the deed was done. In the summer of 1901, Jane's reign of terror reached its peak. She rented a cottage in Catawba, Massachusetts, and invited the Davis family, whom she had served as a landlord, to spend the summer with her. What was meant to be a pleasant holiday turned into a methodical slaughter. First, she poisoned the family matriarch, Mattie Davis. Then, she targeted one of Mattie's married daughters, Genevieve, followed shortly by the other, Minnie. Jane was with them all, playing the part of the devoted, grieving friend and nurse, even forging medical notes to attribute the deaths to natural causes. But her most audacious act was yet to come. She targeted the head of the family, Alden Davis. After his death, Jane had eliminated almost the entire family. However, this cluster of sudden deaths in one family finally raised a red flag. The surviving family members, led by Minnie's father-in-law, Captain Gibbs, grew deeply suspicious of the seemingly cursed luck that followed Jolly Jane. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Captain Gibbs demanded a toxicology report on his daughter-in-law, Minnie. His persistence paid off. Forensic doctors exhumed Minnie's body and conducted an autopsy. The tests revealed lethal doses of morphine and atropine. The authorities now had their proof. The investigation immediately focused on the one common denominator in all the deaths, the ever-present, ever-helpful nurse, Jane Toppan. When the police arrived to confront her, Jane was the picture of calm. Her faint, knowing smile never wavered. In the interrogation room, the dam of deception finally broke. But there was no remorse, no tearful confession. Instead, Jane spoke of her crimes with a disturbing, eerie pride. She recounted her methods in chilling detail, her ambition clear: to have killed more helpless people than any other man or woman who ever lived. She confessed to at least 31 murders, but her own haunting words suggest the true number was far higher. It would be safe to say, she mused, that I killed more people than was ever supposed. The trial was a media sensation. Newspapers dubbed her the Angel of Death, a name that captured the horrifying duality of her nature. In the courtroom, Jane stood before the judge, her expression a blank slate. The jury, after deliberating for less than an hour, found her not guilty by reason of insanity. She was sentenced to spend the rest of her life at the Taunton Insane Hospital. For nearly 4 decades, Jane Toppan lived within the asylum's walls. The woman who had craved control was now completely controlled. Reports from the hospital described an aging woman, often seen sitting in a rocking chair, whispering to herself, her eyes empty but for the occasional flash of that same eerie smile. She died there in 1938, taking the true number of her victims with her to the grave. The story of Jane Toppan is a chilling reminder that evil can wear the most convincing of masks. She turned the sacred trust between nurse and patient into a weapon, and compassion into an instrument of cruelty. Her legacy is not one of healing, but of horror, a haunting echo in an empty hospital corridor, where all that remains is the ghost of a nurse's cap on the floor, a symbol of a promise irrevocably broken. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating and unsettling as we did, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the darkest corners of history. We'll see you in the next one.